Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. I also live stream all of my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you would like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it get put together live, send me a message today. Alrighty, so tonight's build, we're going to be building Roman's PC. So Roman saw the awesome deal I had on a 9700K system with a 3060 the other day, and unfortunately that was a one-time offer and it was already snapped up by someone. So I put together this other build which is very similar in specs, and basically it was the same price. So instead of the 9700K, we've just gone with the 9700F. So I'll go through all the parts here. So we've got an ASA 120mm Blizzard cooler. So this will be a much better cooler here for our i7 CPU. For our motherboard here, we've just got a generic box here. So this is just going to save a little bit of money being OEM packaging. But this is a MSI Z390 Plus. So good motherboard to have the Z390 chipset, which is the top Intel chipset there for that board. For our graphics card, we've got the MSI Ventus 2X. It's 3060, so 12 gigabytes of VRAM. It's got the two fans, just a single 8-pin power connector, but this is a really good value for money card right now, considering that they want about $700 at retailers for a 2060. Get the 3060 for like just over $800. Yeah, definitely worth it. So we'll just put that graphics card down here to the side for now. And so we got a 650 watt Cooler Master White power supply. This bad boy puts out 648 watts on the 12 volt rail. So it's pretty much a true 650 watt power supply. We got 16 gigabytes of Spectrix D41, 3200 megahertz CL16 memory, which will be able to run at the full speed thanks to our Z390 motherboard. For our SSD, we've got a Western Digital WD Blue SN550. So this is a good value SSD. And for extra storage, we've gone with another WD product, which is the WD Blue. This is a 1 terabyte mechanical hard drive here. And I think that pretty much covers everything. And for the case, we've got the Antac DF600 case, which is a really good value case. Comes with 3 ARGB fans in the front. It's got an RGB and fan controller included around the back. So really good value at just over $100 Australian. So and a pretty good looking case when it all gets put together, and yeah, they come up all right. There's another one that's very similar to this. It's got a different front on it. It's $119. It's also an EATX case, so if you needed something a bit bigger. But that's also a good option as well. I think it fits a 360mm radiator on the top. I think even this one fits a 360 on the top, but the other one definitely does. Alrighty, so let's get started. So let's have a look at this motherboard in a bit more detail. There we go. So as you can see, just normal kinds of things here in the box. Got some Japanese, Chinese material there. Just chuck all that. So we've got our I/O shield, some SATA cables, and some plugs. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, let's have a look what we've got here. Okay. Alrighty, so I'll put the board down. I'm just going to zoom in. My number one moderator's not in the room at the moment, so she can't do this for me. But this should give you a better view of the board. So I'll go around the board and I'll point out the features. So up the top here, we've got an 8-pin CPU power connector. So we've got heat sinks on our VRM here, which is good. So we've got some of these co-processors up the top here with no heatsink on them. So I wouldn't want to be pairing this with like an i9 9900K and overclocking it to all hell. But it's going to be fine with our i7 here today. Not a problem at all. What have we got there? J1, that would be... Is that a clear CMOS? No, JBAT is our clear CMOS down there. Have to look up what that particular header is there. Could be a temp sensor header where we'd plug in a temp sensor cable. Yeah, what's it connected to? Yeah, I think it is meant to be. I think it is a temp sensor. I'd have to look it up. So yeah, if you're interested, hit me up and I'll tell you what it is. So over here we've got two fan headers. So we've got one that's designated CPU, one that's designated pump. So they're exactly the same, it's just what they're designated. So when you go to look at your fan settings, you can see which one is labelled pump and which one's labelled CPU. Over here we've got another fan header. We've got dual channel memory here, so 4 slots. So these two are 1 channel, and these two are 1 channel. So when we install our memory, we'll install one here and one here because we want them in 2 different channels. Because both the channels, they can communicate with the CPU at the same time. Whereas if we had 2 in the one, we'd have the capacity, but we wouldn't be able to talk to 2 sticks at the same time. So always best to have it configured like that. Some motherboards will even tell you if you don't have it like that to put it like that when you turn it on. And so if you're wondering, this little power connector here, this powers the CPU and all this stuff around the CPU. Like up here I mentioned these co-processors, so there are things like an arithmetic logic unit that gives the CPU maths logic essentially, so it can't do maths without that. There's also a maths co-processor chip, for example, among other chips up there that work in with the CPU. So CPU on its own is pretty dumb, can't do much, but it needs instructions from other parts, and this is the system that will send all those instructions to the CPU. Anyway, so we've covered our memory here, so we've got 4 slots, 2 channels. We've got our 24-pin RTX power, so this is what powers the rest of the stuff on our motherboard here. Over here we've got a USB 3 header, so these pins are quite delicate here, so be careful not to bend them. We've also got another USB 3 around here on the side. We've got 6 SATA ports down there. Then along the bottom here we have our front panel connector. We've got 2 USB 2s, JC1, not sure what those two are because that's our clear CMOS up here. JFP2 on an MSI board is the speaker header. This would be trusted platform module, these pins. We've got a Thunderbolt header. We've got 2 more system fans. We've got an RGB header. It's the only RGB header on the board, a 12 volt. Yep. And then we've got our front panel audio down here. This is the MSI Z390 Plus. So this one here can be picked up for $99. It's a little bit different to the one that's in your build. Yours is the Gigabyte UD. So if you want to look up the board that's with your build, yeah, look up the Gigabyte UD. It's pretty similar in terms of features and stuff that you're going to see on this board. I think it's got a little bit better heat shielding along the top there with the co-processors. Anyway, so as I said, this little header down here is our front panel audio for our speaker and microphone jack on the front of our case. And this part of the motherboard down here, this is where all the audio stuff is. Like we used to have sound cards back in the day, but we don't really have sound cards unless you're an audio professional. So I basically got a sound card baked into this bottom part of the motherboard here. And that's why around here, and this end of the I/O, you'll always find the audio outputs, because they keep all the audio together on one part of the motherboard, because audio signals can be easily interfered with other electrical signals, so they try to keep that separate as possible. So the standard design on an ATX motherboard will be with the audio in that bottom left hand corner there. So, and then around the back here we'll go for our I/O. So we've got surround sound, microphone, and we've got Sony Philips digital interface, which is the optical out, so you just hook this straight up to your sound bar or whatever. We've got a USB 3.2 and we've got a USB Type-C, and then we've got 4 USB 3s, gigabit Ethernet, and a PS2 port there as well. We also have a DVI and a display port out, but neither of them are going to be in use in this build because we've gone with an F-series processor. So I'm actually going to plug these up right now, because it's a common thing that people make a mistake of, because they've had computers before and they're used to plugging in their cables for the monitor up here. So I'm gonna plug these up. And then the last section to talk about is just in the middle here. So we've got a fan header here, so this will be for the fan on the back of the case. Usually, in our case, that will be a fan for our radiator. And so we've got 2 M.2 slots here, and we've got this little one here, which is a CNVI Wi-Fi slot. So that one there won't be in use in this build, but that's something that you can just add, like a little tiny Wi-Fi card that goes in there. You can also get Wi-Fi adapters that go into the PCIe slots as well. And so we've got one PCIe X16 slot, and then we have an X8 slot here, but it's X16 length, but it's only connected X8 across. And then we've got 3 X1 slots here as well. And that pretty much wraps up this board. Obviously, I said during the video, these 2 pins here next to the battery, they're our clear CMOS header as well. So if we need to reset our motherboard from applying bad settings that stopped our computer from booting, that is the master reset pins. And so it's just 2 pins on the board. But to activate it, you just get the tip of your screwdriver and just short those 2 pins out. So just make contact with your metal tip of your screwdriver between those 2 pins, and it's the same as turning the power button on. So if you don't have any cables connected down here, there are 2 of these pins in here, which are the power on switch, so I can just turn them on by touching the 2 pins. In this case, it's these top 2 here. So if I touch both of them with power connected, the computer will turn on just like I've pressed the power button, because that's all the power button does. It goes over those 2 pins, and when you press on, it just makes them short out against each other, and then it powers on based on that. It's a circuit. It's either open or closed. If it gets closed, it turns on. Anyway, so that's our motherboard in a bit of detail there. So that's all the features that we have on this board. So let's get started with prepping it. So we'll start with the CPU. So Intel actually include coolers with these CPUs, but we're actually not going to use this cooler. We're gonna actually stick that into the Intel cooler graveyard back there. Let me just... Alrighty. So here's our Intel CPU, LGA 1151, which is our land grid array. That's what LGA stands for. Land grid array is a reference to the type of socket that it goes in. So Intel CPUs are pretty strong. They're pretty bulletproof. I could kind of chuck this on the ground and pick it up, and I could drop it on ceramic tiles and stuff like that, even from like a couple of meters high, and I could just be like, oh yeah, sweet, put a bit of build, turn it on, it's going to be fine. Okay, it's pretty solid. It's really hard to break an Intel CPU because there's no pins on the bottom of these things. These just have touchpads. The pins are actually in the socket. So it's the opposite of AMD. They have all their pins on the actual CPU, so you can badly damage an AMD CPU. And so when we open up this socket, that's where our pins are. You can see them reflecting there in the light. So this is a LGA 1151 socket, so that means there's 1151 little pins in that socket, and you do not want to bend these pins. It's not impossible to fix, but they are significantly harder to fix than AMD CPUs. So, and to install our Intel CPUs, there are two little notches on the chip. They'll be in a slightly different location for different sockets. And you just need to line up the little notches in the socket with the little notches on the chip. Try and get the CPU as close to the socket as you can, like a millimeter above it, and just line it up and it'll just drop in nice and neatly like that. And then just go around the corners with your fingers and just make sure everything is lined up. There's also a little golden triangle in one of the corners, and there's a little animation on the board there to show me that yes, that golden triangle is lined up there as well. But I prefer to use the notches on the side of the socket. I find it easier to deal with the tactile sensation of the notches in the chip and seeing the corresponding notches in the socket. But that's a personal preference there. They give you multiple ways of ensuring that it's in there right. And then, like I said, just make sure the corners are placed down nice and evenly. Avoid jiggling the CPU around in the socket. Those pins are really quite delicate. And what we want to do is we're going to put this arm down. So there's a bolt on the board, and we need to make sure that the lip of this clasp is down under that bolt. And then we just push down on this flap. There'll be a bit of resistance there. Might feel a bit sort of horrible to do it, but you'll get it down there and it will go under there. And when that clamps down, it puts nice even pressure over the CPU. So all those pins below are not getting like all the pressure applied to one side and potentially being bent from that. They're getting a nice even distribution of force. So yeah, so it works out really good having it like that, and that's why you avoid jiggling it around and stuff. You just touch it lightly in the corners to make sure that it's neatly in the socket, and you're ready to go. So we'll just go with the next thing that we've got down here, so our M.2 drive. So if you haven't seen SSDs for a while, this is all the SSD is these days. Just these little sticks. You get these in up to 8 terabyte capacities. And so these are approximately, even a bad one is about 4 to 5 times faster than a standard SSD, like the traditional ones that look like this. And the reason why they're so much faster is they go through the same system that the graphics card uses, called the PCIe bus. And that can communicate with the CPU really fast. So it's much faster than communicating through what's called the SATA bus, which is where your old SSDs would communicate through. Oh, I didn't like that, did it? Oh. That's alright. Yeah, and so they just sort of slot in, the M2 drives just slot in these sockets on an angle. Yeah, if you've never done one before, it might look a little bit weird, but there's a little bolt, undo that. You need a fine tip screwdriver for that. It's pretty much the only time we actually need a fine tip screwdriver, when we're doing an ordinary PC build like this. So anyway, moving on to our memory. This is great memory, this stuff. Like gonna put my enthusiast hat on here for a second. So like this memory, you can easily get this overclocked, keeping the latency as is at CL16, and you can easily get it up to 3600, completely stable, no worries at all. It's great looking RAM. It's usually really good value as well. So this is the Adata XPG D41 Spectrix, I think it's called. And yeah, you can pick a set of 2 times 8 GB sticks up for $129 thereabouts, depending on your retailer of choice and state and all that. And so a lot of people call this stuff RAM, but RAM is actually just the little chips that sit on the sticks. These sticks are what you call DIMMs, so dual inline memory modules. That's why they got the little divider halfway down. There's dual modules on the one stick. So back in the day we used to have SIMs, or single inline memory modules, but we've had DIMMs for quite some time now, decades. So this is the new standard configuration that they've gone with. I don't see them changing it anytime soon. In fact, I know they're not. I've seen the next generation of computer memory, which is called DDR5 memory, and it's basically the same kind of configuration. What they usually do with memory to ensure easy compatibility and stuff is they'll actually change where the little divider is on the stick. So if the board is taking DDR4 memory and someone buys the new DDR5 memory, it won't slot into that socket, so they won't even have to go through that whole but it fit, but it doesn't work kind of situation, which is always fun for the home builder. All right, so we've got our SSD, our CPU, and our memory installed. So now we can turn our attention to this cooler. I'm just going to move my keyboard out of the way here. And so this will come with an Asa Hurricane fan, no doubt. They're good looking fans. Okay. Here's our cooler. Is that a pre-installed fan? No. I did. I excited myself. Because you know how much, everyone knows how much I love screwing down fans. If you've watched my builds before, you've probably heard me talk about screwing down fans. Alright, so... Hey Jack, how you going? What we're doing tonight is we're building an i7 with a 3060, so should be a pretty good build. And so this will be mounted. I should probably check the bracket on that. What have we got here? Oh, we've got one of these. I like these. So these go on the back of the board and it's all one unit, and I can just slide these plastic sliders to get them in position for different Intel sockets. So real easy compatibility there. And so does that mean I can use oh no. Okay, easy. Hey Roman, how you going? So I'm just trying to read the comments from like far away from the screen here. But yeah, so we've come some of the way. We've got the motherboard here prepped. So we've got our CPU, our SSD, and our memory installed. So I'm just working on the cooler now. So this cooler's going to be mounted like to the back there, and so we'll probably position it so it's going to look somewhat like how I'm holding it right now. So this will be on the back exhaust vent of the case. And then the cooler block will sit around like that. Alright, so I got them, and then I should have some generic bolts. Yes. Okay. Oh shit. Oh no, where'd that go? Have I done myself a mischief? Oh, I'm using my magnet. I have a magnetic screwdriver piece. So it's good for finding screws that I drop. Although it's finding every other screw that I don't need. Are you serious? I always do this. I'm so good at it, eh?
It's almost starting to get embarrassing.
No, it's my thing, man. You know, everyone has a thing. Some sort of strange thing or some sort of comical thing that they do all the time. Here we go. Huh?
I said you do it to yourself.
I know. I'm aware of that. Hang on a second. They don't look like they fit that bit. But these screws in the AMD one look like they fit perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. These fit perfectly. Okay. So.
Tim,
Yeah.
Ryan says you can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's all coming along. We'll get this cooler mounted. Some coolers are like relatively easy to install and put together. some of them have like fiddly bits like what I'm doing now. So I've got to get these arms attached and like the right arms for the build.
Jeff says I'm good for making to see mine do it soon.
Yeah, dude, yours will be sick. Looking forward to that one. This is the Antec DF600 case.
Once you get the GPU ready to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's the fun part, right? Yeah, those other screws are not the right size, but these screws are just right. These are like Goldilocks screws. Yeah. Oh, dude, I have a magnetic bowl, but it's like completely overflowing with screws. The thing is, I don't have time. I don't have time to organize screws, if you know what I mean. My screw organizing time is really quite limited.
The Antec Striker is a dope case, torn between that one and John's bow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Nah, go the John's bow. Like, the good thing about that case is it doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't really matter what other things you have in there. Heat won't be an issue for you. You don't have to worry about pretty much anything. You pretty much don't have to worry about your graphics card, fan tuning, or any of that. It's going to work fine straight away. Alright, well, we had to do a little bit of work there, but we didn't have to do any work here, so that's a good thing. And it looks like... yeah. So it has these little plastic feet on the bottom that'll stop it from making any contact. So we need to go to the middle one. I'll just line this up. This. That's okay. Got that back plate on there now. And so now we can mount our cooler. So how we were gonna do it like this. So let's get these cables where we want them to go. Go down like this, and we're just screwing straight into what's that? Yeah, I know, you haven't got that far yet. I'm just working out what bolts that I need. There should be these thin ones, the other one's plugged LGA 2011. Yep. Thin one, and that's another thick one. Thin, thin, thin. All right. Ugh. Plastic. I love plastic. There's always a bit of plastic on the bottom of the cooler block here, but make sure you remove that. Add a bit of thermal paste here. So I just sort of smudge on a very thin layer. Put a bit of a, make it a bit thicker in the middle there and it'll spread out. But just make sure I've got coverage. And I'll just wipe the excess off up here. What sort of GPU, like what spec? I've got really old ones laying around. I don't think they're going to be any good to you. The problem is right now, it's the used market's insane. If you've got a used GPU that's like something decent, people can't get enough. If I could get more used gaming PCs, I would, because there's that much demand for them. I get people all the time who come to me like they're transitioning from console, like many are, to PC, and basically they've got it in their heads that they can buy a gaming PC for about $500 or less. And they got no idea what this stuff's worth.
970.
Yeah, I do have a 970. It's it is in someone else's PC, but they don't have to have a 970. So we could maybe work something out there. Yeah. Which coolers? I've done a couple of them. My wife's got one in her rig, so we've done that one. I've done 2 others since then recently. Got a couple more coming up. They're good coolers, man. And if you've got one to go in like a Leon Lee case, yeah, absolutely. I reckon they're a great combination. Alright, so we've got our cooler installed there. It looks like it's making nice contact. Everything's looking in the back there nice and straight. You can see that it's clasped down there nice and firm, which is good. And so we had a fan here. Yep.
960. 960.
Oh yeah. Good old 960. Like it's still alright for like 1080p gaming and stuff. Twice.
Going for a third?
Yep. Stupid cable. Not anymore. I dropped the screwdriver. I said like, not anymore. And I dropped the screwdriver. There we go. We've got one prepped motherboard there, ready to go in our case.
Since it doesn't need anything special, he's set only 7. Just for Minecraft and that, sitting on my laptop.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, we can put something together. I mean, I've got a couple of things. Send me a message.
Jackson's, what do you reckon about my John Spow case? Because I'm leaning towards the Leon Lee bands with GPU, RGB cables, and CPU code.
Yeah. I mean, like that's what I'm saying about the Johnsbow case. Like, you don't even need the fans technically because it's all open. It'll never overheat.
Was that crazy looking?
Yeah, it's the one Junior got.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That case is cool. It's like some sort of space helmet or something. I don't know.
I think it was Cougar that first did cases that design.
Yeah. They did like a black and orange one. If I remember.
Oh, it's RGB to the max as always. Alrighty. So we should have a hard drive around here. Yeah. Oh, yep, sweet. Hey Nick, how you going? Good to have you with us. Alright. So we got one of those easy install hard drive trays here. So all we have to do is line up the bolts. It doesn't want to get stuck on the rubber feet that it sits on.
Tim Roman wants to know, would you have any spare cable covers? Happy to send some extra money.
Cable covers. I don't think you're going to need them. Because this power supply's got flat black ribbon cables. So I'm going to be able to like tie everything down real neat. But you let me know if you want. I can definitely get that sort of stuff.
Nick says you're currently out on the road. Passenger seat, of course, had to stop by.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, don't be watching me while you're driving.
Be careful out on the roads.
You can listen in, but I think it's probably better seeing the PC get put together. Yeah. Oh, it's perfect. So yeah, no ketchup and mustard cables with this. All flat black ribbon cables. So on this build, yeah, we're not even really going to see much of anything. Yeah, no. You let me know. I don't want to say I'm like the best at cable management or anything like that. Far from it. I don't even try to do it absolutely perfectly. I do it in a way that makes sense to me as someone who might have to go and like work on it. If the more you tie it down, the more you make it look real neat and pretty, the more like zip ties that you have to untie when you have to change something and swap something out. It can make what would be like a 5-minute thing into like a half an hour thing. So that's why I don't absolute manicure it. I can do it, but it takes time and it's just generally not worth it because it makes more work if you ever have to do anything. Like say you have an RGB fan that's dead and then there's like about 20 cable ties tying down all your RGB fans all nice and neatly around the edges and stuff like that. Then you got to pull it all out, cut out all the cable ties, pull out the dead fan, reroute the other one, tie it all back up, and by the time you've done that, you've wasted so much time. So hey Dominic, how you going? Haven't seen you for a little while, mate. How's things? So we're going to install this power supply with the fan drawing out air from within the case. And so we're doing that because where possible with a PC build, we want to try to balance the airflow of our case. So if we've got 3 fans on the front blowing cool air in, we want 3 fans on the back blowing heat out. That would be a front-back fan case orientation. We need to have the volume of air coming in should equal the volume of air going out. Then you have good flow of cool air through the case, and it cools and expels the heat.
So the understanding would be sending it to you if anything like your work.
Yeah, no worries, man. Well, like, I mean, hopefully we'll put this together and you won't have any problems with it for years. So, I mean, that's the good thing. See, that's the good thing about buying a PC now in this day and age is, like, I can pretty confidently say that any PC that I build now, unless it's like a budget build and stuff like that, you know, if you've spent like, you know, around the $2,000 mark on a computer, I can pretty confidently say that for the next 5 to 7 years, you won't have a problem with it in terms of how powerful it is and all the other software that you want to run. It's gonna be up to the task, and it will stay current and a feasible computer for you for a long time. We're at the best point ever at the moment for that, because we're coming up to, if you've heard of something called Moore's Law, where it was like every 2 years the processing power that you could get twice as much for half the price. And so it was like a case of every couple of years, as soon as you bought your computer, it was obsolete and stuff like that. Whereas now you buy a computer and your computer's not going to be obsolete for years, because we're coming up to the hard physical limit as to how far they can push silicon chip design. And as we come up against that hard limit, anything that we buy, the difference between what you have now and what the new generation product is going to be, the gains are going to get progressively less and less and less from this point. They're managing to keep up the gains pretty well, considering they're coming up next to that hard limit there. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's still one of those things. What Dominic said.
Yeah, good man. Just had some family stuff going on. Sorry, I haven't made any comments.
Yeah, no, dude, don't feel rushed or anything, eh? You do what you got to do. What you got to do. So what we'll do here, we'll just swap this fan. I'm gonna put it on the top, up the back, and then we'll have the radiator on the back here, an extra exhaust fan at the top, and we'll also be using the power supply fan to suck heat out there. So we'll have heat coming out from these 3 points, and we'll have cool air coming in through the front. So I would be guessing, based on this and based on the components that we've got, this case is going to have plenty of airflow and is not going to cause a problem when you're gaming or doing whatever you want to do with this PC.
Have you heard of the quantum CPU they're working on?
Yeah, so quantum computing is nothing like silicon chips and all that. So it's coming, but in terms of like consumer PCs and stuff like that, we're not going to see that for quite a long time. It will be a state-of-the-art thing that's only being used, you know, by big players like Google and stuff like that. Will be experimenting with tech like that, but in terms of it coming out to consumers, yeah, we're gonna be using silicon for many years. So while we're coming up to the end of that era, we're certainly not there yet, and there's a lot of work to be done between now and when we're using quantum computers. Yeah. Yeah, if you, we watch a lot of Family Guy, and there's a skit in Family Guy. It's on one of those ones where they're like back in like the Middle East during Jesus years and stuff like that. And the character Carter, he's the rich father-in-law of Peter. So Lois is his wife's dad. He's like a billionaire. And in the show, he's playing King Solomon in the Bible, who has like, I think it was King Solomon or some sort of king who basically he gets the shits when the three wise men are going to Bethlehem, and he's like, oh no, King of Kings, I don't like that. He sounds like a major dick. Well, I'm the king of kings, and then he's asking his guys who are like, he's like, yeah, so. Would a guy who's not powerful make sure that all of his advisors are shorter than him? And then his like three advisors are like, hey, big guy, and all this shit, like just like little yes men basically. And then later on he's like, oh, I'm so bored. How's the TV coming? And there's like two guys like playing with sticks and ropes, like trying to make the frame of a TV, and they're just like, we are a long way off. And so yeah, I always say that to myself. We are a long way off. Alright. So this is a really pointless dust filter. This one is a proper dust filter. This does like nothing, so we're actually going to dim that. And so yeah, now we've got our power supply installed, we've got our motherboard prepped, we've moved that case fan up the top there. So we'll just go and install our I/O shield. So these just kind of snap in the back. They're becoming a little bit less common with motherboards. Motherboard manufacturers are going like a, just building a panel onto the motherboard. I guess it makes it easier for end users.
Yeah, you don't cut yourself either.
No, I've sliced my finger open on a motherboard I/O tray installing it. So, alrighty, I say it's every time, but I need to get a vertical camera that'll do an angle down here. I think I've nearly got the solution in mind. So, watch this space. So to mount our motherboard, hang on, let me just check these offsets, but we should have standard ATX. Yeah, we have standard ATX, but I have to cut this out. Oh, it's got another fan here as well, so I could use a third fan. I could mount the power supply around the other way. I don't think it's necessary. I'll still put the yeah, I can still put this fan on though. That's no issue. It's meant to like bolt on down here and blow air on the graphics card, but I don't think that's going to be necessary, to be honest. We'll just bolt this one in. Definitely no issues with airflow now in this case. There we go. So let's get our motherboard installed. Cool. Alrighty. So what screws are we using down here? Using the thin ones or using the fat ones? Thin ones. Yeah.
So I'm going to send you a message to see how much I slowed and my posture.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'll have a look at that for you.
And wants to know what would you recommend for dust control?
For dust control, run your fans low. And then when it does inevitably get dusty, I recommend just a standard leaf blower, mate. To be completely honest, a leaf blower won't exert massive amounts of pressure on anything, and in my experience, it won't damage anything on the motherboard. You could also use a hair dryer or something like that to just blow out the dust.
Oh, cool.
Generally, don't use the vacuum cleaner because if you knock something, it'll just get sucked up the vacuum cleaner. Yeah, there's reasons why you don't want to do that. You don't want that pressure variance and that suction. You just want to blow the dust off the surface. So a lot of people use a vacuum cleaner and it's fine as long as you're careful. But yeah, if you've got a leaf blower, just take the PC out onto the veranda and open up the case and give it a blast every couple of months or just whenever you notice a little bit of dust building up. But in general, if you run your fans on the lower settings, that's the best way to control dust. So I got a mesh case, and on the front it sucks in a fair bit of dust. I just pull the front panel off and give it a quick hit with the leaf blower. That's all I do. Occasionally I'll take the PC out and just give the whole thing a blow. Okay. Well, that's not going to work. Perfect.
And so she's got one of those hair hand dust blowers for dust.
Perfect. Perfect, mate. Absolutely perfect. Just give it a quick blowout. You don't have to do it very often because like you'll only start noticing a problem with temperatures once it gets pretty dusty in there. So the best practice is if you start noticing that there's some dust and you can see it, just give it a quick blowout. It'll probably be once every 2 to 3 months in general. But yeah, just have it. I'll tune all the fans up so that when it's not doing anything, the fans aren't going to ramp up. But once you start doing anything, the fans will just automatically ramp up. So that's how I normally configure a PC. So it's just so that when it's not doing anything, it's not just constantly sucking in heaps of air and along with it heaps of dust. So some people just run it all on maximum all the time, and the problem with that is that it just keeps sucking more dust into your case, and you could have like 10 fans on your case thinking, oh, that's going to keep everything cool, but if it sucks more dust into your case and like coats everything, it could actually mean your PC runs warmer. So yeah, you can use a vacuum that blows. That's fine. It's sort of just like a leaf blower then. Just be careful with the typically like the aluminium tubing and stuff that comes on a vacuum cleaner. Be careful not to knock any of the things that are on the board when you're using it. Just try to be careful like that. I guess the leaf blower is good because you can sort of stand back and just give it a couple of quick blasts and just the dust just disappears. So I find that's like the least risky way of doing it. Like I said, a hairdryer and stuff, not as powerful obviously, so it'll take you a bit longer to do it that way, but that's good. It's better to do that than use those cans of compressed air. It's not even compressed air, it's actually some kind of solvent, so it's not very good for the environment to do that. So it's always better to do something like a leaf blower. It's going to save you money and it's going to be good for the environment.
How easy is it to access those front fans?
Okay, so those front fans, so what we got to do is just pop off this front panel, just like that. There you got your front fans there. So it's really easy. You can, if you don't like the look of that plastic at the front, you can remove that. You could also have the fans on the inside of the case there, or you could mount a 360mm radiator on the front here behind those fans. And then I don't think you'd quite have enough room for a 360mm plus another 3 fans, but you could. It'll be very tight, but you might be able to fit that. But that just snaps on the front there. It's really, yep, snaps back in place like that. So yeah, really easy to access those fans there. You can open the thing right up if you want. Yeah, it's pretty good, versatile case. You could do what you want. You could hard mod it there by cutting out some of the metal there, and then you could mount a radiator internally there if you wanted to, if you were into doing a bit of hard modding, which is always a bit of fun. I should do I'll at some stage do a video where we take a kind of ordinary case and we turn it into something really cool. So let's just get some of these cables out the back. Yep. There we go. So we've got our radiator, our fans, power supply, motherboard, all installed at this point. So we are at the point where it's just time to start hooking everything up. and managing our cables. So for this build, even though we don't have a 5-volt header, we've got an RGB controller over here. Yay! It's also a fan controller, so that's pretty handy as well. So it's fan. Let's worry about these RGB ones first. Let's get this all sorted. So we can daisy chain if we have to. We'll just plug. Put that one in there. Try and stash this cable way down there so it's out of the way. I don't think we're going to have to daisy chain. Oh, there's a bit of plastic on there. And number 2. And where is our 3rd fan? Oh, one of them already plugged into the controller. Okay, so which ones? That's a fan. So this will be our control, this will be our pump, and this will be our pump fan. So I'm going to plug these two into the pump and CPU fan headers. So we're going to put our pump on our pump, our CPU on our CPU. You don't have to do that. It just means that when you go to do some work on it and you're looking at the fans, you can tell exactly which fans are which. So we'll just plug that other one into the controller there. And so we've got some more cables to untie down here. So basically we've got a fan cable here as well. And so what we're going to do with that, we're going to plug it into the motherboard so we can control the speed of all of these fans. So we'll just plug it in down here. You fit through there, you bastard. Don't make me hit you. There you go, you bastard. Go. And So this cable here is the addressable RGB cable. We won't actually be using that. So we're going to tie this up with this SATA cable.
I need to get past.
What do you need?
I need to get it over the veranda. That's what I need.
God. Because of that little netting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got that. All of our fans and RGB have been hooked up. So we can just get a zip tie and just tie these up here. Don't need to tie them tight. That would just be overkill, but we'll just keep them all together there. So we know that that's our RGB.
You need to tell next door to get a screen on their fucking bathroom. She almost went next door.
Oh well. That seems like something that doesn't affect me. Okay, so now we've got all of these cables out here. So we're going to need this one. This is for our graphics card. We're not going to need this one. This is the second one for our graphics card. We're going to need this one. We are going to need this one. Yep. It's our SATA cable, so we need that to power our controller and our hard drive. Definitely need this big one. This is our 24-pin RTX power for the motherboard. And we definitely need this one. This is our CPU power cable. But the rest of this stuff we don't really need. Not in the current configuration. So once again, we're just going to tie that back. And we'll just stuff them back down where our power supply is. So we have a CPU power cable. It's best if you can route it up this way. Go. Once it's in place, I just sort of hook that cable up back around there, and it'll just sort of stay in place. So we have our CPU power hooked up. And so next we will do our main motherboard power here, so RTX power. And so this one, we will, can we fit up here? I think we can fit up here. Just hold them down for now. I'll cable tie these all up. It's our graphics card. So we've got our hard drive here. Plug that one. Yeah.
Yes, so someone the other day, someone requests one of those cases that looks like one for the spaceship that the RTX 2.
Yeah, well, I'll be probably be doing one soon because Jack wants one. Jack's gonna get one. Look up the Johnsbow mod 3. It's a mod 3. There's also a mod 5. Is there? I can't remember. There's a lot of different ones. So, all right. Actually, might remove both of these now and just deal with it. So our graphics card we'll mount that down there. Yeah.
And this is the power in the back of the motherboard.
Oh. No, well we're nearly there.
Jaden wants to know, does this build have a Wi-Fi adaptive PCI Express?
No, it doesn't. Not on this particular build. But we can always add a Wi-Fi adapter. It's not a big deal. You can get a 300 megabit Wi-Fi adapter for $19. So it's not like it's no big deal not having it on this motherboard. As you can see here, we've actually got 5 PCIe slots here. So you got 3x1, 1x8, and obviously 1x16 there as well. So plenty of room if you want to add a Wi-Fi card. I think I've probably got one lying around that I could put into a build. Always like to have a couple of them just sort of sitting around, just if we forget to include Wi-Fi, or you know, one or both of us thought that it was on the board but it wasn't, or something like that. Alright, get those down there nice and tidy. So yeah, home stretch now, absolutely.
And it says mod 3 and mod 5.
Yep. Yeah, I thought it was them. Oh, HD LED came out.
It says I want to see when the building case looks insane. It's super sane. Yes.
Yes, super sane. Yes, we all know what that is.
Is there too many things you recommend to have on here that I don't?
Yeah, that would be it. I'd be looking at the Wi-Fi. That's the only thing that I would add personally. So USB 3. Oh, look at this. Perfect. Perfect. Just hides those cables nicely. All right, this is the point where I like to be at. All we have to do now is hook up a SATA cable, and I've got a SATA cable around here, don't I? I don't have to open a new packet.
Roman says he usually runs Ethernet though.
Yeah, well, if you usually run Ethernet, then that's not going to be a problem. You've got gigabit Ethernet here. Obviously, you could add like a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port if you wanted to, but I mean, you're going to be bottlenecked by your internet speed most probably if you do that, so probably not much point. Alrighty. So I'm going to install our SATA cable in the back of our hard disk drive, and I'm just going to stick this cable here for now. We're not going to plug it in just yet. And so now we are on to the final point, our graphics card. Our RTX 2070 Super. Oh, did I say 2070 Super? I meant 3060. It's basically a 2070 Super with extra VRAM. This just looks like a 2070 with extra VRAM. Yeah, so here it is. The MSI Ventus 2X. 2X being reference to these two fans. But they've gone with two fans with a shitload of blades on them. These two fans will no doubt move a decent volume of air for their size. We've got a single 8-pin power connector up there. Nice gunmetal grey brushed aluminum look. It's just plastic, but it has that nice sort of grain to it there. Nice MSI logo there. MSI make really good graphics cards. It's one of the things that they're known for. They make really nice looking motherboards as well. So definitely a reliable manufacturer. Probably a little bit not quite as good at customer service as Gigabyte or Asus, but have some really nice looking stuff and really good performing items as well. So that's our card there. So I'll just put it down for a second and we'll make some room for it. So we want slot 2 and 3. Oh, and they're all actual blanking panels. That's good. Alrighty, so we'll remove our protector from our pins. Oh, I've got a little secret door here that I've got to unscrew. There we go. These bolted up nice and tight. Excellent. And we'll just plug that in from down there, and no, it's going to be best tied off down here. get this positioned correctly. Oh, this is it. There we go. Oh, of course. While I was plugging in the graphics card cable and moving that around, I unplugged all the front panel connectors. Sweet. So we'll just chuck the back panel on. You know your cable management is right when you can just put the panel on nice and easily. Well, not always. You could be in a really tight case and it just be sort of hard to get on because of the amount of room that's back there. But we got plenty of room in this case, so it makes it nice and easy. So yeah, they're looking pretty tidy. Just got a few other small cables here just to position right. We'll hide and conceal these wires that we're seeing there. That will be plugged in probably there. Just leave it partially in the port there. So yeah, now we're at moment of truth time. Let me just check that there. Some peripheral action going on. Alrighty, so where is boot drive? Sweet as. Alrighty, it's going to turn on, or have I stuffed something up? My power is on. My power is plugged into a cable. So it should work. Here's hoping. Look at that. Very nice.
Did you just turn?
No. No, this is just normal behavior because we've hooked up a new CPU configuration. So it's just having a... So you want to change the screen over so everyone can see. Let's come up here. This is the initial post screen after we've installed a new CPU or memory or something like that on the motherboard that's fundamentally changed the configuration. So I won't do this for a graphics card, but it will do this for, you want to change the lights.
Oh, it's not taking.
This is a trippy note. Anyway, so this is what will show up when you change your CPU or RAM. As you can see, it's coming up with the 16 gigabytes of DRAM. It's detected the USB mouse and keyboard. It's detected our Samsung Type-C 1100, which is our USB Windows installation drive, and it's detected ATA, ATPI devices, and it hasn't detected anything. It's just said that it's tried to do that. All settings were reset to its default values. So now we can hit F1 and we're going to go into setup. So what we're going to do here, we're not going to use this OC Genie. We don't have an overclockable CPU. But we're going to turn on our XMP profile. We don't need to worry about Octane or RAID or anything with this build, so we're just going to leave everything as is. Go over into advanced mode, into settings, to boot. Oh, sorry, it's in save and exit, and boot override. And so what this boot override is, so whatever I click on, this is what it's going to boot to. So I'm going to boot to this, and it's going to come up like this. I'm going to go into Windows 10 64, and now we do our Windows installation. Oh. So I always install Windows 10 Pro, but I never enter license keys during a live stream for obvious reasons. You don't need a license key to install Windows 10. When you go to custom install, we've just got our OneDrive there, which is excellent. So we want to go next now. And now we can press down on our little SATA cable and actually plug it in. But only once we get to this point. Before this point, it's a little bit of a quirk about how Windows installs the operating system. It's like a little bit technical, I guess, but I'll explain it to you. Windows has this thing called a boot manager, so it needs a little, it's like a little subset program that tells Windows how to turn on and how to boot up, right? And what it does is it makes sure that boot manager is separate from the rest of the Windows operating system. It's not stored in the same place on the hard drive. It's stored in a completely separate place on the hard drive called a partition. You might have heard me talk about partitions. But basically it creates a partition for boot manager, and by default it creates this partition on whatever is in the drive 0 position. So regardless of what you tell it to install the operating system on, it will install boot manager onto whatever drive is plugged in as drive 0. And so the reason why that's a problem is if we have our hard drive hooked up, our hard drive is going to show up as drive 0, not our M2 SSD. And what that means is then boot manager will be stored on the hard drive. So if you ever get rid of that hard drive, or that hard drive ever dies, your PC won't boot into Windows anymore. And you'll need to do a Windows reinstallation, migrate all your data, all that kind of fun stuff. So I try to set it up so that so boot manager and the operating system are together on the same SSD, and then you can do whatever with the hard drive. You can take it out, you can replace it, do whatever. Windows is just going to work fine. So it's a little, that's why I do that. I'm not just some weirdo who just does that because I feel like it or something like that. There's a very technical reason why I do that. And if you're building your own computer, I really recommend that you follow that step, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot when you go to upgrade your hard drive, or the hard drive starts to die and you get rid of it completely and replace it with an SSD. So just make sure these are all tied up nice and tight. A little bit of cable management for me to fix up before I ship this off, but I mean realistically it's pretty tidy looking build. And this thing will be purring with the radiator on an i7 9700F. Oh, okay. Now that configuration works as well. Yeah. So one of these fans, I put them on the same way, but the other fan that I put on is a reverse fan. So we've actually got some cool air being sucked in here, and then these two fans are still blowing out. So what that means for our case airflow is it's probably going to be a net positive, because the power supply fan isn't going to be aligned with these other fans. So when these ramp up, this one won't ramp up as much. It's controlled independently by the power supply. So by having this extra fan up here just blowing a little bit more cool air in the case around our radiator, we'll probably end up with temperatures a little bit lower. So not that it's going to make much of a difference with this setup, but it's always good to have our stuff running at cooler temperatures so it lasts a bit longer. So we always use a US keyboard layout. We don't add a second layout. Gonna go, I don't have internet at this stage. Continue with limited setup. Once again, there's a reason why I do this, because I like to set a generic user account with no password, because that way if you get asked to enter an administrator password, you can just press enter with a blank password, because I never set a password on any of my PCs. So unless you set it, it's blank. And it just keeps everything simple and no one has to worry about it. So yeah, we don't want Cortana. It's like Amazon Alexa and Siri and all that sort of shit. So now we'll plug in our Ethernet cables, so we've got some internet, and once we're into our desktop, which will be very, very soon, we can start doing our updates, and we can install the SSD to install some extra software. What other modes have we got? So obviously you can cycle through your RGB just by pressing the button on the top of the case here. Just seeing sort of modes we've got here. My OCD's killing me because the RAM has defaulted to rainbow, and I want to see the lights. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, now my OCD's not killing me because the RAM is now on the same as the fans. I can change the RAM, but I have to install a heap of software first, so I'm gonna deal with that first. All right. What's that? Oh, so okay, so RAID stands for redundant array of inexpensive disks. So you can tell that a serious nerd came up with that terminology. So RAID is a system that's mainly used in servers and for people with network attached storage devices and things like that. So there's a couple of different ways you can use RAID. It's a way of linking multiple hard drives together into what's called a pool, and as the name says, you're basically linking multiple hard drives together. So you can either do what's called a RAID 0, which is where you can add multiple drives. Say let's just keep it simple. Let's say you have 2 hard drives, right? If you run them in RAID 0, it'll take every file that you want to write to the drive, and it's going to write half of it to drive 1 and half of it to drive 2. But it can write the data to both drives, half of it, at the same time. So it's going to be twice as fast. But with RAID 0, and you can do this for 3, 4, 5, 6, as many drives as you want. As many drives as your RAID controller will support. And basically you get a speed increase by adding each drive. The problem with RAID 0 is that if a drive dies, you lose the data on all of the drives. And so there's another RAID called RAID 1. RAID 1 is all about redundancy. So it's basically, you've got 2 hard drives. Anything you write to the first drive is also going to be written to the second drive. So if you have issues where, if you have an issue where a drive fails, you don't have to worry about it. You don't even have to go offline because all the data is still going to be available from the other hard drive. So RAID 1's good if you want to back up important stuff. And then there's also RAID 5, which I'm not going to go too much into, but RAID 5 has a recovery mechanism if a drive fails, and you also get a bit of speed increase there as well. But and the good thing with RAID 5 is you don't lose as much of your capacity, because that's the thing with RAID 1. You lose half your capacity. If you have 2 4TB drives in RAID 1, the amount of available space is 4 terabytes, not 8 terabytes. If you had 2 4TB drives in RAID 0, then you'd actually have 8 terabytes of space. And there's what's called RAID 10 or RAID 10. And that's basically a combination of RAID 1 and RAID 0. So if you can picture it in your head, you've got 2 drives that are redundant, and then you've got another set of 2 drives that are also redundant, and it's doing the RAID 0 on the 2 RAID 1 volumes. So you get like twice as fast speed, you get the redundancy, but the thing is you still lose 50% of your storage space. So that's what RAID is. It's only really for some people. If you've got a lot of data, you don't have room to store it on SSDs, and you're worried about drives failing, that's what RAID 1's for. A lot of people use recycled drives, so like drives that have done a bit of work but are still not showing too many error codes and are still operational. So they'll get a heap of them, and they'll put them in RAID 1, and then they'll store all their stuff on that, and then if one fails, it's RAID 1, so everything's on the other one anyway, so nice and easy. Some of these apps. Really? does it not let me do that sometimes? If someone knew the answer to that, I would really like to know. We don't need that. Some benchmark apps. Let me open those 3. I think that worked. Okay, we'll get Cinebench R23 for our stress test. Let's grab that. Please leave me alone, Microsoft. There's a reason why I haven't made a Windows account. Video installer failed. Western Digital SSD, VLC, don't need XTU. Okay, coming along. So I always put some custom desktop icons down, an applications folder, a games folder, and a link to my PC. Download these, update these Windows apps while we're here. No. And we can run MSI Afterburner. What's happened there? Yeah, we'll start with Windows, start minimized. Get these fans tuned. Look at this. Only gets to 100% at 90 degrees. So it'll never get there because it cuts its voltage at 80. So, oh, that's 80 at 60 and 100 at 70. Our graphics card will stay nice and cool. And we'll set up Reaver Tuner when we look at some games. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that if you want. I've hooked up like 4 SATA SSDs, and they're about as fast as like a cheap NVMe drive. So it's always a fun one to do. But the thing is, like, it's okay for like using RAID 0 is fine for like a games drive. Say if you've got like 4 or 5 old hard drives, you put them together in RAID 0 and store all your games on there, and if it fails, you can just be like, oh well, I'll download my games again. It's like not a big deal sort of thing. Oh, yep. Needs to be restarted before Reaver Tuner. Why does all these downloads appear to have stopped? Oh yeah, definitely. So the 3060 Ti is a much faster card. A 3060 Ti is more like a 2080 Super. A 3070 is more like a 2080 Ti, and a 3060 is more like a 2070 Super. So it sits somewhere between the 2070 Super and the 2080 non-Super, non-Ti. So that's roughly where it sits. And so they were meant to make it like a non-mining card, but I believe they're like, it's unhackable, but nothing's ever unhackable. So they've already hacked it. Apparently, it only took them like a couple of weeks, and yeah, they can use it for mining. Just tidy up down here. It's just the date and time. There we go. Alright, while we wait for that, let's have a quick look around our system and make sure everything's running good. Here's our CPU, our 8-core CPU. So our memory, XMP's not applied.
Nick said I had a mate trying to tell me it's 2060 Super or 2070 Super, can't remember which was better than my 3060 Ti.
No. He's probably like, yeah, no, mine's a 70. It's better than the 60. That's like, you know, people going, oh, but I've got an i7. It's like 6th gen. Why would I want to upgrade? Why would I want an i5? 10th gen? Ugh. Even though, like, your i7 4th gen only has 4 cores and the i5 10th gen has 6 cores, 12 threads. Yeah. All those brand names are kind of bullshit. I wish they'd just give model numbers, and maybe the consumer would be a little bit more confused, but hey, at least it'd be legit. At least it wouldn't be totally misleading where you have people thinking that some old PC that has an i7 in it is better than the brand new i5 PC you're trying to sell them. Or like a Ryzen 5600X, and they've got like a Ryzen 7 1700, and they're like, "Ooh, but I've got a Ryzen 7. Why would I downgrade to a Ryzen 5?" And it's like, dude, Ryzen 5000 is not comparable to your first gen Ryzen stuff, man. It's just not the same thing. It's not fair to compare those CPUs. It's not just 7 for 7. I think people think it's like car engines, you know, like the bigger the number, the bigger the cylinder count. No fucking replacement for displacement, mate. Even though that's bullshit even in the car world, right? But it's like that's how they see it. I see the same thing with power supplies as well. People seem to think that if they get like a bigger power supply that it's more power. And it's like, no, the only situation where a power supply puts more power into your computer, do you know what the result of that is? That means your computer starts to melt. All this smoke and shit starts appearing in the case. That's not good. All the power and voltage is very, very tightly regulated on a motherboard. A power supply takes power from the AC outlet, converts it to DC, and sends it out at exactly the right voltages for the motherboard to handle. That's what it does. And if you have an 850 watt or a 450 watt, if your total consumption based on your graphics card, motherboard, RAM, fans, CPU is 390 watts at the absolute maximum, it doesn't matter if you've got an 850 watt or a 450 watt, your motherboard's going to get that 390 watts or whatever I said it was. That's the amount of power it'll get. It doesn't matter how big a power supply in it. You'd have a 10 kilowatt power supply in it, and it will still just use that power that it uses. So there's no, other than you're running a shitload of computers, you're running them 24/7, then there's a case for like bigger power supplies that can run more efficiently at idle and at like working loads, so that the overall energy consumption is less. But that only makes sense for like economies of scale equations where we're dealing with like, 10, 20 computers in an office. Then it's like, yeah, okay, let's spend an extra like $5,000 on power supplies for these 50 computers or something like that. And over the course of 3 years, I'm going to save $13,000 off my electricity bill. That's the equation. That's where it makes sense to go, yeah, okay, let's put big power supplies in these computers even though they don't need it. If you're just a home user, generally 75%. As long as your maximum usage is 75% of the power supply you install, you are happy as. Oh yeah, people are. It's like people with. This is why I say auto enthusiasts and PC enthusiasts are the same thing. You'll get you'll get guys who are like, you know, oh, I don't know, let me think of an example. They'll think that they'll take like a let's take Holden, as it's a pretty recognizable brand with like some premium line of cars that are, you know, more souped up. It's like someone going, oh, okay, yeah, my standard stocko V8 SS Commodore is better than your V6 HSV souped up to the max Commodore just because it's got 8 cylinders and yours has 6, without even looking at like the actual kilowatt power that it puts out or the torque ratings or any of the other statistics that would help you determine which vehicle is more of a weapon. No, it's just I got 8 cylinders, you got 6, so fucking I'm better than you. And it's bullshit. Alrighty, so we'll just get these cumulative updates from Windows and we can start having a look at some benchmarks. Okay, yeah, there's our Ethernet showing up. We don't need this. And we don't need this. So as you can see here, we can see that it's detecting a hard drive. Now if I was to go into my computer here, you're not going to see it. You're only going to see a disk drive here. Well, you're only going to see the SSD that we've installed Windows on. So we have to actually set up our hard drive. So what we've got to do, we've got to go in here, we've got to go into disk management. And it's going to come up like this automatically when you have a new drive that's not formatted. It'll come up with this window here, and it will say, yeah, you must initialize this disk before Disk Manager can access it. And so we use the GPT down here. We just hit OK. And once we do that, we've left with this volume here. Like I was saying before, see it says disk 0 there? It's automatically, by default, put the hard drive in the disk 0 location, and that's why we don't connect it till after Windows has started its install process. So what have we got? Yeah. No, well, I mean, just use a benchmark. Like, there's a website that shows you all this stuff. And so yeah, anyway, I'll do that again. So now that we've got that showing up there, it's got this black line over it. If we right click on it and click New Simple Volume, and this is how we can create a partition on our hard drive. And so we need to create the size. By default, it will just default to the maximum size of the drive. And we can change our letter here, so we can make it any letter we want. But we're going to leave it as D because that makes sense to me. If you're wondering, just a little bit of a fun fact here. Some people wonder why we don't use A and B. And the answer is we do use A and B. Well, kind of. A and B have been allocated a position, and the position of A and B is floppy disk drive 1 and floppy disk drive 2. That is A drive and that is B drive. That is the default letter that is allocated to those drives. Now, the reason they're A and B and all that is because when we go back in time, computers didn't even have hard drives. There was no SSDs, there was no hard drives even. We just had disks. So we'd turn on the computer and we'd have to put in a floppy disk. And the first floppy disk drive is drive A. So we always had drive A. Drive A is the first floppy drive. And then people would typically have a second floppy drive so that we could actually, like, we could copy and save information onto the second floppy drive while we're using a program on the first floppy drive. So it was pretty standard for people to have an A drive and a B drive. And then with the invention of hard disk drives and then making their way into consumer computers, that's why the hard disk drive, the first hard disk drive, the drive we install Windows on and stuff like that, is allocated by default as drive C, not A or B. And so the second drive that we install is always allocated as D, and that's why we leave it as D. But you can do whatever you want. If your name starts with T and you want a T drive, you can have a T drive. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. Nothing's stopping you from changing this at a later date. There is a few little caveats with it, but there's nothing stopping you from doing it. We'll call it a storage drive. Yep.
It says mini sparring race. It's so fucking hot. Floppy drives. This generation has
no idea. But yeah, that's the story between the drive letters that you see there in Windows. So it's not some bullshit that had no reason. There's like a good reason they've stuck like that. And you might think, oh, but no one uses them anymore. They are actually still in use in like really random applications. Various things that have old school software that works for them, infrastructure that's old. Yeah, they are still used. So because they are being used in some applications, they just keep those default drive letter slots open for floppy drives even in 2021. So I don't think it's ever going to change, because I think until we move on to some fundamental new like operating system or something like that, we're always going to have a C drive as our main drive that our operating system's on.
Since I just learned about floppy drives and disks in 2000.
Yeah, true. So my first computer that I had was floppy only. So we had our drive A was a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk, which is the big, like actually floppy disks. And then we had a slave drive, which was a 3 1/2 inch floppy disk. And then when we upgraded that PC, then we got a PC with a hard drive. And so that was pretty cool. We had DOS and a hard drive where I could store games on the hard drive, and so then I could just go into C .. / and type in the game that I wanted to play and hit enter. I didn't even have to put a disc in. I thought it was great. And then we got Windows 3.1 and all that, and then that was a whole new way of sort of using the computer. And then 95 came along and upgraded, and Pentium time then, and Pentium 2, and just progressed from there basically. But yeah, it's come a long way. I remember zip drives were a thing where we could have like 100 megabytes on a disc. That was cool. I didn't have a zip drive. My parents would never buy one. I don't think they understood it. I was like, zip drive, it's mad, you can put each stuff on a disc. And they're like, but we've got discs, sort of thing. We've got a big thing of blank discs. We don't need any more room on a disc. They're probably right. I mean, I was just a kid then. I was just like, yeah, it's new technology, man. It's fast. I want it in my computer. I seen it at someone's house. All right. I think we've wasted enough time there talking about that. Is this seriously just okay? I think it's done. Oh, that's interesting. Oh.
What's that whistling sound? Driving insane for a while.
It's one of these fans.
Really high pitch.
I'll see what's going on there. It's not those two fans. Now you got me. Now you got me curious. I'd say it's a fan because it sounds like a rotating noise. Let's have a quick look.
Is it air moving like through a small hole or something? It's making like this noise. You may air howls. Put your hands over the two at the top for a second. Stop them both.
That is weird. I cannot work out where that's coming from.
Graphics card fans.
No? We'll look into that once we get the fans ramping up to full speed, and we'll see whether that sound gets louder or softer, and then we'll have some idea what's going on. Is the power supply?
Possibly.
Could be.
Put your ear up next to it.
It sounds like it's that back fan, but I've stopped it and it kept making that sound. I'm gonna have to pull some cables out, I reckon, because it could be a noise coming from inside the actual. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if anyone else can hear the very slight, faint, high-pitched noise. It's pretty soft. I don't think you're going to be able to hear it from through the speakers. So let's just get Reaver Tuner configured here. Nice and big. Yep.
It says you can hear it too.
You can hear it? Or is that just the regular, like, background high-pitched noise that you'd hear here?
And the thing says yes as well. And Jesse.
Yeah, okay. So now I'm really curious.
It's just that back fan going. No, it's not a normal background noise.
got everything unplugged here at the moment, so
Is it like the cooler itself, like the pump?
I don't understand how.
Ooh.
That's the fucking pump.
That's... Well, that's a horrible sound.
Warranty.
You need to take that back.
Warranty claim, I reckon.
It's the pump.
For sure, yeah, that's not right. That's not right. Well, I mean, Roman, if noise doesn't bother you, I could still ship it out for you tomorrow. If noise is a thing, I'll definitely get this replaced under warranty for you, like, tomorrow. So, just let me know what you want to do. It's not what I'd consider to be a fatal error. It's probably just a case of the pumps making a little bit of noise there. It'll probably be fine. But, yeah, like I said, I can quite easily take this back for a warranty claim for you.
Herman says, "Oh no, what is it?"
It's just the pump on the cooler.
This thing.
It's
That
just
light
making
pump
it's making a slight high pitched noise. Just very slight. So it's enough for me to notice, and it's enough for me to go, yeah, I might take it back for warranty. If you know what I mean. Just the fact that it's making noise, brand new, you know, it'll probably be fine, but yeah.
Yeah, Roman says, I would rather not make that noise here.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah. So, look, it's all good. We'll just keep going with it tonight. We'll do a stress test on it and stuff. We'll do a bit of a quick stress test because I'll have to redo it once I get the new cooler for it.
It's driving me up the wall.
No. Well, let's get everything finished off here. We're pretty much done. So I'll get Dragon Center wants to do it for me. I am clicking. Are you serious? Because I'll unplug you. I'll get it through Microsoft Store then. Oh, so now it works. Okay. And it's just like stopped.
I feel like putting some
What
plugs
is
in my ears.
what is going wrong with the internet? You need to damage your ears more, babe. You've got the hearing of like a 15-year-old if this is really bothering you.
I'm not the only one.
What is going wrong with the internet here tonight? Oh, now it works. Honestly, I've like more problems with Ethernet these days than I do with Wi-Fi. Used to be just so reliable, eh? Okay. So we'll finish this up, we'll get this shit installing. Alright. So let's see how she performs. No problems there. So if you're used to watching these benchmarks by now, the important thing to note about what we're looking at here now compared to maybe some of the other benchmarks that you've watched, and you may have noticed it here, even though we got just the 8 boxes going around, each of the boxes, they're not fucking around. So that shows the power of this particular 9th gen i7 CPU. It only has 8 cores and 8 threads, but it's got 8 really strong cores and threads. So each core is quite powerful for what it is. So it packs a punch for the size that it is, essentially. And so as you can see there, no temperature issues at all, not even coming close. It's just a shame about the noise on that cooler. And I'm wondering if that, remember how when we got the packaging, we noticed that there was a little bit that had like poked through from inside the packaging. So I wonder if the package was dropped or crushed.
I think it might have been like crushed by something heavy.
Yeah, like it was sitting on the bottom of a pallet or something like that,
Yeah.
and it's been damaged that way. So yeah, as you can see there, if you remember doing this last night, when we were overclocking the 5320, sorry, the 5730 rather, 5830, fucking Xeon chips. Yeah. No, all good, man. Have a good one. I'll let you know tomorrow how I go with getting a new AIO for this. And sorry I won't have it shipped off tomorrow, but we best deal with the faulty part and the warranty claim while I've got it here than, you know, have a problem with it in 6 months' time and have to send it back to me. So that's all good. But yeah, like I said, I'll keep you in the loop with it. And yeah, so that's no problems there.
Nick noticed that the whistling picked up the benchmark.
Ah, did ya? Okay, I didn't. My ears can't really determine that very well. So, yeah, it is definitely the pump that's making that noise. So something inside has moved around, and is now making contact with something that's a moving part inside the pump. So. Not sure what it was, but yeah, it won't be an issue, mate. I'll get it returned and a warranty claim done on that one. So, but let's just finish up the software installation here, because even though I'll change the cooler, all I'm doing is swapping the cooler out. So none of the other stuff on the computer has to change. None of the software or any of that. It's all just as valid. The only thing I've got to redo once I install it is the stress test, just to make sure that the new cooler is mounted correctly and not making this whistling noise. So
Next one you get is making more whistling sounds.
yeah, it's like, this is an operational characteristic of the product. God.
Well, you've got to ship it
Well,
if that
well,
happens.
well, mate. I want to swap it then.
I want something else.
I want something better for the customer than one that's whistling. No, but I've had this one before, and it doesn't make this sound. That's not normal. They don't make whistling sounds.
It's a water cooler.
Yeah, it's a pump. Yeah, something's bent out of place inside there, and it's making contact. So no doubt if I press around and grab the outside of that cooler, I might even be able to fix it, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's something I'd do if it was my own and I couldn't take it back for warranty. But at least we know what it is now.
No, it's still there. It's just quietened and
Yeah, just quieten down now because we're not doing Cinebench at the moment. But yeah, no, like I said, it's all good. It's all good. I don't think personally that it's anything that would make the AIO fail. Like it's not the sort of thing where it's just gonna explode and piss out water everywhere. But still, it's something. It's not what I'd want personally on my new PC that I bought. So even though this is like a budget 3080 build, right? Sorry, 3060 build. But I still wouldn't call a $2,000 computer budget, and I still wouldn't expect to get a faulty pump that's making a like whistling noise delivered. Like, some people might say to me, oh man, I'm so deaf, I'm not gonna fucking hear it anyway, blah 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 blah, I don't care. And you know, I'd just be like, yeah, well, as long as you know that something inside the pump's damaged, I can get it replaced for you, because obviously that's not right. And it's good. That's why I go through local retailers and wholesalers for my parts where possible, or from other big national companies that have a good reputation for like returns and stuff like that. It makes my life easier, but it makes it easier for any of you guys that buy a computer off me. Because if I deal with retailers like that, I can get fast replacements and fast returns on things. So if there's a warranty claim, I can bring it back, and I can have a new product like immediately. So that's the advantage with dealing with some of those companies. Like, if I just got whatever cheap stuff I could find off eBay and put it together, then if there was a problem, well, you know, I'd be dealing with the manufacturer directly, and we'd be talking weeks turnaround on replacement parts, and in the meantime you won't have a computer, and yeah, not fun. And so I think we're going to have to do a BIOS update on this bad boy, because that looked like a pretty old version of BIOS.
Make it stop.
I'd be a bit worried if it does stop.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now with this. So we do a quick benchmark on it there. As you can see, like the multi-threaded performance, that's not what this CPU is about. But have a look at its single-threaded performance. Straight out of the box. Over 500. Yep. Yeah, no, that's, like I said, that's not normal, and we'll be taking this back for warranty, so that's not a problem. Yeah, man. So hopefully they have everything on a Star Trek for me tomorrow. They've shipped it from PC Case Gear. I did get express courier, so I should get it tomorrow. But I have had experiences where I haven't got it the next day, even though they're meant to send it like express. But yeah, you know how it is. But I got everything else here, so we're just waiting on the CPU, case, and cooler. And then I've got everything else here, the motherboard, the SSD, the graphics card, memory, all that kind of stuff. So I've got pretty much everything. So if I don't get it tomorrow, then I will get everything on Monday. So if I don't get stuff tomorrow, we don't do it tomorrow night, we'll be doing it on Monday night. Unless I get a Star Trek delivery on Saturday, but I don't think so. I'm not hearing it like make any more or less noise when I stress it, for example. That could just mean the radiator's just running, the pump's just running at a constant speed. Alright. Let's update our BIOS. Let's get that all sorted. Let's get that XMP sorted. And then that might be it for tonight. We're gonna have to remount the cooler when we get the new cooler. So I'm gonna have to do all the stress testing and shit later. So we'll do the stress testing and benchmarking when we do the follow-up when I get the new cooler. So that'll hopefully be tomorrow. So we'll have another PC build tomorrow night, and then might do a short one for this first. What, did not find a BIOS update?
Molly on YouTube wants to know, does this build have a networking card?
Yeah, so this build has gigabit networking on the motherboard, does not have Wi-Fi, and we don't have a Wi-Fi card installed. So you could go, ideally the best value right now would just be to pick a board with 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. You can get 10 gigabit Ethernet cards and stuff if you have a use case for that. So like we can always install one of them in a build for you. But generally 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, if you can find a motherboard that has that, that would probably be the best value for money, as opposed to buying another motherboard and then having to buy a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet card. Obviously 10 gigabit Ethernet's probably going to be cheaper to buy a regular motherboard and just buy the 10 gigabit Ethernet card, because the only boards that have 10 gigabit Ethernet are quite expensive motherboards, so you'll pay the fee there. Yes. I seriously find it very strange that there's no BIOS update for this. Update our Windows apps while that's finishing off, and then we'll get that XMP sorted, and we might leave it there for tonight. So all these Windows apps, these are things that need to be updated and whatnot. Oh, has it already done that? Okay. Oh yeah. Sweet. That's just finishing off. Oh, what am I doing? Running Furmark at 1080p. CPU's barely doing anything. The CPU's pulling 29 watts. Not even a light bulb. So you can see there 130 frames a second there. restart. We're going to go into BIOS and we're going to work out what's going on with that XMP profile. If not, we're just going to manually tune our graphics card. Sorry, not our graphics card, our memory. Okay. All right. Okay, so XMP is sitting there as off. Ah, I know. Because I didn't save an exit. I went, huh? It stopped because it turned off.
I know.
It's gonna be. It's not going on for much longer. All right, we're nearly done. We're nearly done. I'm so glad I've been deafened by like rave music and concerts in my younger years, because I can hear the high pitched sound, but it's not. It's like a faint background noise to me. Oh, so it installed XTU, did it? Okay. Yeah, download it. So with XTU, we don't have an overclockable CPU, but what we can do, it's not like we can't do anything. So as you can see, all our cores are locked here. We can't touch any of that. But what we can do is we can turn up all of these boost settings. We'll leave that as is. We don't want to touch the voltage if we're not going to overclock. We can change the reference clock. So this is a way of overclocking without overclocking. So let's give it a go. I'll show you. Okay, so see the max frequency? We're going to change it. So this is what it does. At default, it times this number by 100. We've made it so it times this number by 120. And crash straight away. No, well, so they're not. These chips are not meant to be overclocked, but you can. My point with that wasn't to make it crash straight away. It was to show you that there is a little bit of headroom there. Okay. But yeah, anyway, back to XTU before I made it crash stupidly. I was just playing around, really. But you can tune your non-K CPU just a little bit. Don't try to do it as much as what I did straight away. Do little increments and see where. Like what I was doing last night with overclocking. You're meant to do little increments. You're not meant to just key in some ridiculous number. I was just hoping that that would work and it would be a considerable upgrade just to show you there quickly, but let's just keep let's just put all the boosts up max, because we've got a liquid cooler on it, not the stock cooler that it comes with, so it's got plenty of headroom. So we'll put all these values up to maximum. We'll hit apply. So now So remember we were getting about 3,600 and like 510. So let's see what impact that made. Straight over 4,000 now. $540. So there, just from turning those values up to maximum, we've edged out a bit more performance from our 9700F here. So we could touch the reference clock, but I'm just going to leave that for now. But that's something that you can adjust on your CPU. You might have to adjust the voltage up to make this stable. But that's something that you can play around with in your own time. Maybe I'll do a video on overclocking non-K CPUs and stuff like that. But I got that many videos I've got to make. I don't know when I'm going to get time to do it. So anyway, that was that. I think that's pretty much all we really wanted to do. Let's make sure that XMP profile is on, which it is, 3200. Perfect. Alright, so I'm going to leave it here for tonight, everyone. So I hope you enjoyed this video, hope it was educational for you, and like I said, we'll be taking the cooler back for warranty. We'll be getting a new cooler, we'll be fitting it, and we will be wrapping this up tomorrow. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video.